all should be well. If it all works the way it's supposed to. Yeah, we practiced, yeah.
Hey, I got a flag there just in case you need one there, Earl.
A flag?
Yeah.
Practiced, yeah.
I got a flag there just in case you need one there, Earl.
A flag? Okay, hold on a sec. I am on my own video here. Just a second. How do I mute? Okay, hold on a sec. There we go. All right, I was live streaming to myself, so I guess I know it works.
Yeah.
Because I was on a different window watching the live stream at the same time, so that's why we're getting feedback. The live stream is actually a delay of 20 seconds, but it's considered live for the purposes of the meeting. It delays 20 seconds when you broadcast on live feed. But not for you. So Matt is in the meeting. Where's Matt? There he is. And 4 board members and us, Andy, and okay. I think the crowd is all here. Let me check with my kitty.
Oh, there you go. There's gallery view. Now I can see everybody.
Oh, it's exploring. Okay.
So I need to turn my mic off?
No, I will mute you. Steve, you can mute yourself too. You just go to your mic at the bottom left corner. You all leave your video on because when people are looking or speaking, it's a whole lot more effective if they see a face.
Okay.
But you can also turn your camera off if there is a reason to. But I will also mute all of you whenever, so you can unmute yourself when you have something to say. Okay, Bill says it works. He's at my house and he says he's watching me, so I guess we're all good.
All right, we're ready to go then. We'll call our regular board meeting of March 31st to order. And do our pledge of allegiance. We've got a flag here, so you guys can just pretend you can see the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a special guest, Theo, with us from ESDs, our technical support in case we have any issues. So thanks, Theo, for being here. Start out our agenda with celebrations and recognitions. I'll just start out by saying I can't be more appreciative of our administration, our staff, our teachers, and everybody that's been working their tails off to manage the crisis that we're in. So I think we're doing a really good job of it. I've heard nothing but positive things from folks in the community. So good job, keep up the good work, and eventually we'll get back to normal.
Thanks. We're doing the best that we can with a difficult situation. Food service is doing a great job, and we started last week promoting a little bit, saying, "Yep, we're going to do this," and I contacted all the key players, and today, if memory serves me right, we served 202 members of the community, 106 adults, mostly seniors, and 93 students. So what's that? 209. And I think that number is going to continue to grow and could peak as high as 300. That system is working pretty well by day 2, right? Now we've got it down where the deliveries are working well. And as far as the delivery to the seniors go, we couldn't have done this without McLean's, and Christine McLean is what a rock star she's been in trying to get this organized and get those things out. And she's being assisted by, I believe it's her mom and kids, and they're running the delivery system for all of the door-to-door, which there was 106 deliveries this morning.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's some serious goodwill that the district is showing, and I really appreciate your willingness to share food services with all of the seniors in the community. Mr. Pettit, I thought that was an incredible community benefit to help them in this difficult time.
Anybody else have anything to add? No, we'll move on down. The agenda, any adjustments, additions, deletions, for anything on the agenda?
I don't have any requests for change.
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as presented then.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the agenda is adopted. Next item, the consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
The motion from John and a second from Steve, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Next up is discussion and possible approval of the emergency food service program. Mr. Pettit.
Well, I think that this is obviously the feedback that we received is tremendous, and the involvement and support with the community. Here's the bottom line. We believe that we're getting reimbursed for senior meals, but there's confusion. We also know that there's money going to be made available to reimburse based on program costs for COVID. It was in the support package. We don't know the details about that. Here's what I know. The community was in need. And regardless of whether we end up getting reimbursed for the senior or adult meals, we definitely will for the kid meals. That's what I had sent out to you saying, well, I believe this to be the case, and asked the chair and vice, I'm going to go ahead and do this because the timing is before the board meeting. So think of it as much of a ratification, but looking for your approval of the food service program as we're running it. And that means community members that are indicate a need and seniors, we're going to provide meals to. The meals are breakfast and lunch 5 days a week during the duration of the school closure.
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, I think it's a great community benefit, whether we get reimbursed or not. I'm fully in support of it.
I would echo Andy's support, irregardless of whether we're reimbursed. Hopefully we are, but I have no problems going forward if we're not.
Okay, when or if I know one way or the other, of course, I'll send out an email to all the board members and let you know the outcome of the reimbursement. But I recognize that we're going to be running the food service program regardless of feeding seniors. And so the cost is in the cost of food and supplies only. To add that, we're going to be running it for our students who are required to. So the cost is actually much lower than what you would think, because food is, it's a cost, but it's not the greatest cost in the operations of food service program. The greatest cost is in the cost of labor, and we're going to have that regardless.
So we're doing it Monday through Friday, correct?
Correct. We're Monday through Friday. For people that weren't aware, we're running that program for kids and for seniors Monday through Friday.
So just kind of thinking long-term down the road a little bit, you know, at the end of the school year, we would normally shut down. We thought ahead to summer if the situation is still, there's still a need.
We haven't in the past and frankly have not planned on running a normal everyday summer feeding program. So once the crisis is ended, the emergency is over according to the state, is where we're going to end up closing this program up. Because at that same time is when we can no longer deliver meals on a bus. We're not allowed to. It's a waiver right now that allows us to do these things under that program anyway. So my first guess of when this will end will be the end of the school year, right in that neighborhood. It could be a little bit earlier, it could be a little later, depending on when we stop this food service program for students. Because we haven't in the past for a lot of reasons, and I guess I could prepare for a discussion if you wanted to in the future as to why we don't run a summer feeding program at our cafeteria. A summer feeding program normally means students show up at the cafeteria, and if your volume is really low, meaning you got 10 kids, it costs the district an awful lot of money because your reimbursement is based purely on the number of meals served. So if you don't have enough volume, most small districts don't run such a program.
The kitchen's working good?
It is. I wish that we could show it off.
I found it kind of ironic that we get to have a discussion about cafeteria related things, even though we're not in there.
But, you know, Steve, I will say this. Now, the way that they're going with the preparation of the meals is they are preparing them most of the preparations actually the day before they go on the refrigerator and they're heat and serve. They're all prepared. They could be eaten cold, but hey, you know, who wants cold pizza, right? So it comes out and it's a heat and serve. And we would have a real challenge preparing 400 meals at the same time in the old cafeteria. Let's just put it that way. And where we are right now, it's clearly doable. That is a great functional kitchen. It's a good asset.
Since you're now an expert.
Well, somebody saved me some of a maple bar that was delicious, so my compliments to the chef.
Now that you're an expert at this, all the technology stuff, maybe you should do a tour, a live broadcast tour of the new building. Put it on the page, the app.
That's actually an excellent idea.
Okay, we will get it on, get a video up. Touring the new building.
Maybe you can hire a tour guide for that.
Oh, I'm not going to do it. I have an AV expert to do that.
Do we need a formal action to approve this?
I would request that the board make a formal action. This is an expenditure of funds that I may not be authorized to do because it's outside of normal parameters of spending. I mean, technically we are giving resource to an individual with the possibility of not having any kind of reimbursement. It's not for educational purposes. I don't believe I have the authority to do that. However, I know that the board has the authority to do that. So I would ask for board action.
I move that we continue to run the emergency food program as presented for the duration of the crisis, or I guess that'll work. Does that work, Earl?
It works for me, John.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you all. Next up, discussion and possible action concerning approval of the Cove SIA plan.
The SIA plan was, we were scheduled to wrap that thing up over spring break, and we had some meetings, things planned. And then we got guidance from the state at the point of closure saying, submit what you have the way it is. And we'll clean it up later. We'll work with you to finish whatever details you have. Just go ahead and submit it so long as we can tell what your plan is. So there's a couple of details in the planning document that are left pretty much blank. That's why. But I hope you had a chance to look at the planning document. I sent you a link today showing that, yes, it was accepted at the state. They have it. That also will allow you to see any progress made on any of it, any changes as they're happening on the plan. Because following board approval, I don't make the rules here, but following board approval will be the state will approve it. So after the elected officials here approve our plan, then the non-elected bureaucrats in Salem will approve our plan or tell us we need to fix it. So the plan hasn't changed since it was presented originally in January. Let me run it down for you. Here is the plan. We have about $306,000 anticipated. That is prior to any kind of crisis, reduction in funding. And we all know from my prior briefings to you that I call that maybe money. It's new money. It's always maybe money because I've seen new money come and go pretty quickly. So right now we're anticipating $306,000. It had to go in certain buckets. Our buckets we're paying attention, we're putting that in, have to do with student safety and health. Bucket is our primary. And then we're also looking at expanded opportunities for kids and increased instructional time. Highest priority right now and the entire budget for the first year, which is next year, is the remodel of the old cafeteria. We'll take up all of the money right now projected. And that is to remodel it so that we have a facility where we can hold IEP meetings, have an interventionist work there, have a nursing station, and that would house the mental health counselor who, as you recall, should be also, we're looking for that to be a dual position. So maybe they are a diagnostician at the same time. Maybe they're a mental health counselor and a guidance counselor. I don't know, but it's a dual position. But we would end up with that area staffed by that person at all the time. We also have a real need for a nursing station, a facility. We have a nurse on site 1 day a week, and I can see in the future that might change to 2 in a couple, 3 years, to 2 days a week. But our 1 day a week and what we're dealing with now, as all of you know, is, well, we put them in a supply room when they're sick. And that's one of those unacceptable options, but it's what we have right now. So the facility became the highest priority. So any hiring of staff, which would equate to be the equivalent of hiring a 1 FTE, and that's somewhere in that neighborhood. And I say it that way because they're going to reduce other operational expenses at the same time, because some of these services we have contracted, but we wouldn't need to contract a future year if we hired our own who's a part-time something and part something else. But we're going to hire a person in year 2, which will be fiscal year 22. We're also going to add augmented reality program, which is our expanded learning opportunity. And we're looking to add the school year or the after school programs. You know, we had a discussion before. I didn't know how much the cafeteria was going to cost. So if you were thinking that after school programs were going to be starting next year and funded by this, it's a lower priority. We don't have the money in this fund to start after school programs until year 2. And so that's the plan as it was submitted. Remember that everything in the plan, as we move forward, would require annual review and approval through the budgeting process, as well as some other things will need to be approved by the board as you go forward. So what you're really approving for us to start taking action on now and planning and putting in place would be the plan as it applies to setting up budgeting for next year to do with the cafeteria remodel. That's the only thing that's really, that this action really pushes us to do soon. Everything else, you get another opportunity to choose another direction.
So to be clear, I mean, let's just say a year down the road, you demonstrate the augmented reality and we're all like, yawn, or we're not interested. We would have the opportunity to go a different direction
Absolutely.
as long as it fit one of the buckets.
Yes.
Okay.
You'll have the opportunity to adjust the budget and adjust the plan every year. But as we go, we will also be staying 3 years out. So next year, we'll be talking about a year we haven't talked about yet and where the money is. Now, some of it would remain the same because if we hire that person's going to stay in that same bucket for a long time, for as long as the foreseeable future. But some of those other things are one-time purchases. For example, the augmented reality is a one-time purchase. It's a single year.
What's the time frame for actually getting the funding?
The funding is fiscal year, what are we at, 21? So July 1st, after July 1st of this upcoming year. It'll be in this upcoming budget discussion.
When, if it all, comes into place, when would we actually be doing the remodeling? Is it possible to do it over the summer before school starts? Obviously, that's kind of up in the air at the moment anyway. There's two hang-ups right now in doing that. The obvious one is I got to wait and see how this crisis plays out and if the money's actually going to come through. I've heard discussion about the corporate tax, which is what funds this. I don't know if there's going to be a special session of the legislature. I've heard rumors, but nothing has actually been set. I'm nervous about it. I'm waiting until the checks are being cut before I really want to start committing money. That's the biggest one. And then as far as the construction itself goes, because of the potential size of the contract, we are going to need to go to a formal bid process, and that will take some time too. So the chances of having it open by the start of the school year, I'd say they're really slim. Chances of having it done and open by Christmas and running, I'd say that's more realistic. Fortunately, because of the location of that construction, I know that we can make modifications to do the construction while we're in session without too much disruption. Just much like we did with the cafeteria, we can get that done and run school and not be too disruptive to the school.
Well, I like maybe money paying for capital improvements. That sounds great.
Any other?
I guess I would move that we accept the SAI program as presented. Is that the correct?
Yeah, I think John made a motion to approve the Cove SIA plan as presented.
I'd second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye, sorry, I'm late. Couldn't find my button.
No, but I heard no opposes, so the motion is passed. Moving on to the next item. Turn it over to Earl and tell us about what's going on in the world of instruction today.
Okay, well, first I'll say there's been so much that I'm going to sit here and try to stay organized and try to give you a summary. But when I conclude, please jot down your questions. I probably know the answer. I've been deeply involved. But I might forget to say some part of this. All right, so we got a closure last month. Everybody knows kind of the history and how we got to where we are. We had a short closure that became a long closure. And quite frankly, I expect that even by the end of this week, as early as the end of this week, we're going to be getting the closure to the end of the school year. I anticipate that. All of our planning is now that that's going to happen. We are putting systems in place as though we are not going to be coming back this year. I kind of expect that order. So over the spring break, when we got the guidance that we were going to close longer, and we weren't going to be coming back right after spring break, we went into action to implement a plan. We had one very clear objective in the plan, just one thing that we were going to do right. Our teachers are going to maintain a relationship. They're going to continue to have that link, that relationship, that connection between kids and their parents and the school. That was my number one objective. That is what I have directed all teachers will do. Therefore, teachers are communicating with parents directly. They are told they must. This is their checklist. They need to communicate with every kid and parent at least once per week directly. And what that means is, I'm not talking about a group chat. I'm not talking about any kind of group communication. It is one-on-one. It is, how are you doing? Let me help you with okay. So that's where we started. Then the challenge for the teachers was to develop supplemental resources. Now I could try to describe that, but we have great teachers, and great teachers sometimes are somewhat independent. So we kind of turn them loose, and different teachers are approaching it different ways, but they're all getting the same effect. And that is to provide educational resources to build on that connection, to maintain an opportunity for kids to continue to learn during this time and maintain the connection with the school. So there's where we were next. Every teacher, I must say, is on board with that. Here we go. We're golden. We got it happening. And by the way, the feedback I've been getting from parents has been overwhelmingly positive as to our communication, the teachers' actions, and those kinds of things. Last night was a rough night. I can't sugarcoat it. At 8:56 p.m., I'm going to remember that time, I received an email from Colt Gill, the Deputy Director, Department of Education, that was that had a document in it. The main document was 29 pages, contained a whole lot of other pages. This is it. This is front and back, by the way, so, you know, double thickness there. So if you were single page, it's a half-inch thick stack of papers. And essentially it says, we have a new direction. And what was so troubling is myself nor none of my peers in our neighborhood who I'd met with today had any idea it was coming. And it is distance learning for all. That is the new state direction. So I attended a meeting today, a Zoom meeting with Colt Gill, Department of Education, where every superintendent in the state was invited, and most of them were there. So you got 200 superintendents in a meeting. So there was an awful lot of chat. I couldn't keep up because it was going so fast, how many people had something to say. And the overwhelming majority of things being said were not in support of this move. I'll just say it that way. So we met with the staff this morning, had all sorts of discussions about what to do. And out of that meeting, there was a couple of very key pieces of information that came out. One is the state is not asking us to provide a plan or a report. There is no plan or report. Here's what you're going to do. There is no plan or report. Well, okay, that's good. That's good. And the next thing is there was a question asked during the presentation that said, well, are you telling us we have to grade the work? Like, just like we always do? We have to assign grades to every class? And the answer back gave me and us great ideas, because here was the answer back. How you grade is a district policy decision. Ooh, I'm getting excited now. So as it went more and more towards, well, this is the guidance, but then you could start reading between the lines that it's the guidance and it's what we're supposed to be doing, providing distance ed for all. But when I asked my favorite question in my tenure as a superintendent, when I'm in these kinds of meetings, my favorite question is, or what? And I asked that question, and there is no or what. No, you do it to the best of your ability. I said, great. I hear flexibility. That's what I'm getting out of this. So in meeting with some of the staff this afternoon, I am very troubled by the idea of going 100% online for all kids and holding all kids accountable during a time of closure. I think that you are developing a system of inequity. You are setting up kids with expectations of lower achievement. I'm telling my staff, I want them to teach to the same level they always teach, and you got to be ready in a week to deliver it online to all kids. Yeah, that's going to work. So I was really troubled by the guidance as it first came out. So here is my solution. And this is where I'm going to be asking in a few minutes for your support and express support in the form of a motion. My solution is that we do two things. One is that we say that all letter grades during the time of this closure will be either an A, a B, a C, or a P. I'll say that again. All letter grades will be an A, a B, a C, or a P. Well, the question is, well, what happens when a kid fails? Well, they didn't take the class. What are you talking about? We were close. So in other words, I'm proposing a system where we reward those that want to and don't punish those that don't achieve during this time. There will be a second part to this. We expect the state to adjust the graduation requirements at the state level. The last I heard was early April, we will hear about that. Early April coming out of Department of Education to Earl means April 14th, we're going to hear. So on April 14th, I'll probably know that the state has changed the pathway to graduation and has changed the graduation requirements for all kids that are in high school for these 4 years to, I don't know, pick a number, 22, 21. Remember, the state requires 24 credits. Here's where we don't really have to pay a whole lot of attention to that. We require 26. We can control it ourselves. So while I can't tell you today, until we really analyze this, exactly what I'm telling you, how many credits, I can tell you it's between 1 and 2 is what I'm going to ask you to get rid of for the next 4 years. It will either be 1 credit, 1.5, or 2 credits, depending on how we end up analyzing the impact of all of this. And I'm not ready to propose that. I'm just telling you, this is my plan. This is what I'm trying to do. Right now, I want to be able to direct people to do grades, to do grading the way that I'm proposing. I want the board's approval that during the time of the closure, any grades that we assign are going to be A, B, C, or P. If a kid doesn't achieve, doesn't show up, has no ability to show up, see, we're doing a system right now where we're telling, say, a 7th grader, oh, and your parents are going to sit with you, and yeah, right. Many parents, that is great and good for them. Others, I seriously, honestly hear these exact words. Hey, that's your job. You're the teachers. Why do I have to teach them? You're teaching them. Well, okay, but the system doesn't work if you don't have an adult checking on them as they're doing. It just doesn't work in certain ages. And then I've got high school kids that it's much the same. Now realize for the elementary, that is K-8 grades, in this case, all of this is for naught. I mean, ultimately in a system. Yes, it's important that the kids get good marks. It's important for the kid, the parent, the teacher, you know, their self-esteem, all of those things that they get good marks while we're closed. Yes, it's important. A year from now, it is meaningless. Because ultimately, whether a kid performs during the fourth quarter, performs high and say, I'll just pick fourth grader. Whether they do well in the fourth quarter or don't do well, I'll tell you where they're gonna be next year. They're gonna be in fifth grade. Because our time for identifying students for possible retention is already past. We would have already had to have identified the possibility and had meetings. And so ultimately, all the elementary kids are going to get promoted just like any other year, whether they do the work or not. I shouldn't have said that in public, huh? But most of them want to do the work. They want to learn. The parents want them to do it, and that isn't the problem. The issue really is the 9-12. That's where all of it lies because we're on a credit system. So I'm suggesting those are reasonable solutions. I think I am really, not that I think, I'm really pleased with the efforts of the instructional staff to comply. They have just really scrambled. The last 2 days have been a little bit chaotic. Starting tomorrow, I don't expect to see any of them here except maybe one person once a week. And they know that. And we're not having parents come pick things up. We don't do that. We deliver things if we need to. We're going to keep the school isolated as much as we can. You know, we don't want to be the central hub of anything. And there you go. So that's where we are. If I left stuff out, there's a lot of it. So understand, I'm sure I left something off. Ask, please.
So Earl, I assume no matter what the letter grade is, those will still transition to the overall like GPA?
Well, yes, that's why, and why I said it could be a P, because some teachers and some classes are going to have a very difficult time doing a letter grade at a distance ed or something that's say project-based or something. And they're going to say, no, I'm going to give you a pass-fail grade. So you got to pass. That doesn't impact your GPA.
Okay.
And then other teachers, say English, they would be much more effective by doing ABC because of the method of delivery. You know, English in particular, Dr. Farrell is very, very familiar with Canvas, did it at the college, is employing the same process, ready to go. And it really, really can do pretty good instruction, and letter grade fits there. And same with math, a letter grade fits really well. But maybe not so much for music. Maybe not so much for, I don't know. I'm just speaking off the cuff. So that's why I said you have, you know, 4 choices of what grade that they can earn. If a kid gets a D, we had this discussion too. We're not going to assign Ds. I'm not going to give somebody lower than the standard. They're either going to demonstrate the standard or they're not. So they got a P or a C. And then if they're above the minimum standards, then they're either a B or an A. And that's the system I have. I feel like we can reward or credit kids for efforts that they're putting in, while at the same time preserving that we're going to hold harmless any kids that do not perform during this closure. And we're just going to move forward next fall and make the adjustments. That's where I'm at.
And the holding kids accountable and assigning those letter grades, that won't start until April 13th, right? That aligns with that mandate. So we have what between now and then is just if you want to be engaged, your kid can do, like, explain that for parents.
Well, right. No, I'm telling because it's not going to make any difference. I mean, most of the assignments, the things that went out, and the teachers are already starting it. We've got a couple of teachers who are sending out things now that they're intending to grade, and starting to communicate that today was the first time that we could ever communicate that, yeah, we're going to grade these things. So, because we didn't know it yesterday, we were told just the opposite. We were told you can't grade on the 19th of March. That was the memo we got from the same guy, Colt Gill, saying you can't assign grades. And then anyway. So no, the 13th is the date you must, according to the state, the date you must have it fully implemented. Our guidance to the teachers is implement as quickly as you can. As soon as you're ready, go ahead and start, because it isn't changing what the teachers are sending out to kids now. And let me get more specific, Jamie. It's not changing, and my focus, remember, is the secondary. So while it might seem a little bit more confusing at the elementary, it's not my focus. I'm not spending a whole lot of effort dealing with how the elementary are doing it, because in the end, the outcome is the same. There's no long-lasting impact for what decision we make with this with elementary kids.
Sure. I feel like that accountability at the secondary level is definitely probably where it's more problematic, just like you said. So I just wanted to be clear. Some of the assignments that have come out, are saying, yes, you'll be held accountable starting today. But if the mandate, if we don't have to implement it until the 13th, so that's just, the assignments are going to be the same. Just
right. Well, yeah, we don't have to have it fully implemented until the 13th, but if we're going to start grading assignments, if I wait until the 13th, at the 13th, I have 26 instructional days left. I think it's what I understood today. So my quarter is getting pretty darn short. So we're trying to get assignments out now so that it spreads it out.
okay.
And yes, there will be some confusion. And fortunately, all of the feedback and the times that I was able to communicate with any of the parents today, they seemed pretty darn receptive. Things seemed to go pretty well in understanding that, this wasn't us like, oh, the district's going to flip flop overnight, because we were just putting out the day before, you can't grade things. We're responding to the guidance we didn't see coming. But I think we can take the guidance and we can make it a good thing. I think we can take this whole latest and make it work for the district. It just took me a day to figure it out, because I certainly was not a happy camper last night.
So we're all just kind of following up on the accountability and punishment piece. So, for example, a high school student currently has a B in a class at the end of the third quarter. If that student does nothing the rest of the year, they're graded on, basically they don't get graded on anything. So does that have the possibility to drag their final score down to non-passing, so they don't get that credit?
Well, Mr. Miles is out there, but quite frankly, we haven't discussed those kind of details. The general guidance is what will drive the decisions having to do with that. And that is, the general guidance, remember, is during the time of closure, we are going to hold harmless students. So if that means that at the end of the year, the kid you just gave me the example, my suspicion would be that Mr. Miles, because I would consult him, he's the high school principal, but my suspicion would be that it would be something along the lines of, we're going to assign a quarter credit for that quarter that was done. And it's not going to show up on the fourth quarter for credit or otherwise at all. So now that student will be short a quarter credit on that particular area, which we may or may not have to make up depending on what the class is. And depending on what adjustments we make, because the adjustments that I would be recommending right away would be at least the reduction of a social studies credit or part of a social studies credit, maybe a half. That's definitely got to be included in it. But the only thing we can't change and we have to pay attention to in adjusting any credits for our high school is English, because there's 4 years, 4 credits required. Whatever happens on this decision, if a kid doesn't do English for fourth quarter, there's where the impact is going to be. And that's going to be our push, is to make sure that the kids do it, because I can't do anything about it, because the state requirement is 4, unless, of course, we get that reduced in what might happen on the 14th of April. The problem is we're going to get, I expect some guidance in the middle of April about pathways to graduation, what to do about these high school credit issue. While we are already supposed to be instructing for credit, while we don't know how many credits are even necessary, and we're supposed to be guidance counseling students on what classes are required. So I'm kind of chomping at the bit here saying, I want a plan now so I can tell a kid, yeah, you have to take this English class, or you have to. So right now, we're going to tell the kids, yes, you must take that English. You must get that English done. If you don't do anything else, you got to get that English done, because we can't make it up without a credit recovery program. And they don't want to do that.
I guess I've got some real concerns. I think when we had our emergency meeting, Matt and Aaron Lair both did an excellent job of explaining all the pitfalls with trying to go online. They made quite an impression on me, both of their comments. And I see a lot of problems with this, and I appreciate you're doing the best you can given the notice you've been given, but I mean, we still have issues with equal access. I mean, what if you've got 3 or 4 kids in the same house and they've got one computer? You've got kids that may or may not be providing childcare for their younger siblings now because their parents are both still fortunate enough to be working. I just see a ton of problems here. You know, you've got maybe you got a 4.0 student and they struggle with the technology or the access, and all of a sudden, you know, we're going to take somebody that's got a 4.0 through their freshman and sophomore year, and we're going to ding them in an online quarter, and they graduate without being a 4-point student. I don't know. What can we just go to a pass-fail system or a participation grade? I really liked your old approach a lot better, and I understand that this isn't you, it's the state, but I mean, maybe it's time to push back.
We can, John, but right from the very first time I was communicating with anybody, I put out the philosophy. And if you can support this philosophy and figure out, you know, how can we best support it? And that is, number one, we hold kids harmless for any closure time. And that is, we find a way so it doesn't actually punish them. Now, I don't want to reward them for that time, but it doesn't actually punish them. And two, that the kids that want to achieve and want to engage get some kind of reward. They get something out of it. There's something extrinsic, more than just, that's what the goal was all along. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think there's an easy solution to that. And that is just modify what I said. A, B, C, P, student's choice between A, B, C, or P. And we do that right now, sometimes with some certain college courses, because we learned a long time ago that when you enroll a kid in a very challenging college course and they get a B and you're going to post it on their high school credit as a B, that's not a good thing. So it was discouraging kids from taking college courses. So we started giving kids the option saying, we'll post it as your posted grade at college or as a P, as a pass. So it has no impact, or it has the great impact that you did at the college. We can do that same thing here. Your individual issues, I absolutely agree with you. We have no business going fully online, which is why I was going crazy last night, because I thought that's where we were going to end up going. After hearing the flexibility today, we don't have to go there. But that is the problem. When you go online and we make a transition like that, I don't care what the state says about, well, you can provide equity because that's their latest guidance. You can't. I cannot equitably provide education to all the students in the district right now going online. I can address individual needs. The student that you gave me that has several kids in the house and one computer, yep, we're addressing that. We're delivering more computers. We can address I need internet access. I can do that. We can address those needs. Fortunately, we have a very good instructional staff. So those individual needs are being dealt with first by our instructional staff. Remember, every one of the teachers had to contact home. One of the questions that they had to ask, and I know the answers because they had to fill out a form for every kid and tell me, was internet access. Do they need a device? How many devices do they have? All those kinds of questions. We already got the answer to because the teachers were asking it, which again was building that connection, having them do it rather than trying to do a centralized survey. So in their initial communications, I think if you got kids, you probably were asked or they were asked. I certainly hope so, because that's what's reported back to me. So yes, it is not a perfect system. I think that it's a reasonable answer. And I'm all ears for what kind of tweaks or modifications need to happen. And the goal being those two goals. And if somebody has another priority, I'm all ears. We're gonna provide an equitable education to all the kids that we serve. Knowing that we have our equity lens, now you look at, here's the two goals of what we're trying to do. And if we can do that and provide for all the students in the district in another way, I'm all ears. This has been a very tumultuous couple of days, and this answer was not developed and saying, okay, we can go there until middle of this afternoon. I mean, this is recent. So I'm listening too.
How are we addressing the internet issue?
The internet, if they're in LeGrand, Charter Communications is making internet available. If they're in Cove, it's a little bit more challenging. I think we have a couple of cases where we've arranged for people to use certain internet. We have one that lives across the street and is actually using the school's internet. We had one today, I heard from one of our teachers saying, it was a 6th grade, said some kid didn't have internet. I said, okay, do we need to provide internet? That's an option. During this time, we'll buy it if we have to. We'll get a hotspot if we have to. And he said, no, I arranged for them to go to their aunt's house in the morning. It's like, okay, now that's a representation of Cove. So now that kid is going to the aunt's house, a couple houses down, every morning to do their schoolwork. And because they're going to use that internet. And we must have issued, I'm guessing 150 devices today, either Chromebooks or iPads with keyboards.
I guess I'm just relieved, Earl, to hear you say there is some flexibility there, that we can control that grading system. When that first rolled out, I thought, oh man, this is going to be tough. You know, we're kind of, just for our family, and I know a lot of families, we kind of have a foot in both worlds. We have a high schooler, we have kids at the primary level, and we're working 12 hours a day. Like John said, we're fortunate to still be working, but that means we're doing all this homework for 4 kids on the weekends.
Right.
So that puts you know, everyone has their own difficulties. So I guess that gives different families different flexibility. There's a little more breathing room. Yeah.
Yes, and the most recent guidance, the other thing just kind of on the side that hit us today, because what it does is it puts a greater strain on all of the instructional staff and gives them daily responsibilities where they're actually teaching every day. Well, that's great, except I have to run food service and I'm standing by waiting to be told to run childcare, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm at my peak. Right now we are peaked. Everybody has a job and they're full-time employed. And okay, if there's going to be any more, I'm going to be answering the people that contacted me from the community that I said, stand by, that said, hey, I'm available if you want me to volunteer. And they're past volunteers for the district. So I know we have a little pool to go to, but we're going to get tapped out if we, you know, out of this as well. And that's good and bad. I mean, I want our teachers, teaching. I want that connection happening. I want the kids staying engaged. We all want that same thing, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't hold the kids accountable for things that are, first off, I can't sit here and tell you that we are going to provide the greatest education in the next quarter. This is not the Cove standard. Our teachers are going to do the best they can. But is this quarter going to be as much learning for even a kid that works on the assignments as we would have had we been in our brick and mortar school and following our curriculum? And the answer is no. And I think that everybody understands that. It's very troubling to me. In my 20-year leadership in schools, I have never been in a position where I tell a teacher that you are expected to deliver instruction that I know, and I'm pretty confident, is less than the full standard of what we are accustomed to here. The circumstances put us into that situation, but then I come back to what was the number one priority of why we're doing this? Maintain that connection. So we will have a degradation in the quality of our materials and instruction. I have no doubt, across the board, as a whole. There might be exceptions. We got a couple of superstars out there, but we will maintain that connection.
I can say that communication, especially from the elementary teachers, has been awesome. So that really helps.
Well, hopefully, if you haven't got it from the secondary teachers, hopefully people are saying that too. But the secondary teachers started their communication yesterday afternoon. Elementary teachers started theirs last week. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's because, and it's not like saying they're not as good or didn't do, no, they couldn't, because there's too many variables. They couldn't communicate because they didn't know until we were able to meet and discuss it. It's a lot easier to guide the elementary teachers and send them on a path. So hopefully the secondary is getting all the same as well at this point. I know my son at home, a junior high school kid, he's telling me about communication because he's on the assignments he has, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, none of this is going to be perfect. Yeah, and we're going to have kids that fall through the cracks just because the nature of how this situation is. But I do think what you're proposing is about the best we can do, really. I mean, like I said, we still want to provide education without punishing kids. I mean, it's not their fault that we're not in school right now. So I think we're doing about as good as we can. Knowing that there are going to be some limitations and challenges and yeah, probably a few instances of not living up to what we would like. But.
Well, I understand that the letter grading system is only for upper elementary through high school. So none of this impacts elementary. They do a standards-based report system anyway. Has a kid met the standards so far this year? And by the end of the third quarter, many of our kids are already meeting, and now we're looking to exceed. So it doesn't really impact there. And my number one thing, remember, objective was to hold harmless. And holding harmless to me, Andy, means they're not going to fall through the cracks.
I don't know. I'm just not liking the idea. I just think there's too many pitfalls, to be honest. I was very happy with the plan you had before. Engage the people, engage, try to keep them, on track, but we're not going to try to grade them or teach them. And I don't know. I'm extremely uncomfortable with the idea that we're going to grade these upper level students. I think way too much of it's going to fall on whether or not their parents are standing behind them, making sure it gets done. And they're just going to be parents with the best intentions that just don't have the hours in the day. And I just think there's a ton of problems here personally. And it's my comments are not a reflection on what you guys are trying to do by any means. I know you've been dealt a shitty hand here, but I don't know. I think I would rather just see us do a pass fail and go back to the plan we had give the kids the grade that they had at the end of the last quarter. I think that's probably way more reflective of what they were doing. A pass fail still, you know, if they don't participate at all, they get a fail, right?
Well, yes, but that would be, we're right back to where I was at the start, where now I'm holding kids accountable in some way on their transcripts and their permanent record. They're now being held accountable for, I believe, our inability to provide an equitable educational setting.
So it would be either a pass or no grade.
Yeah, I could do a pass or no grade. I would like to, Mr. Miles has been.
You're holding them accountable either way, though. I mean, if you're gonna sign a letter grade, you're essentially holding them accountable. So.
Yes. I think, you know, we have the resident expert sitting right here. I'm looking at on my screen. And Mr. Miles, could you weigh in on this, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
All right. Hey, I appreciate all your input. I know that this is a tough challenge all the way around. High school teachers, we had a pretty good discussion throughout the day via email, as well as face-to-face, of course, 6 feet apart. And there's a lot of different viewpoints, just like anything else, different perspectives. So with the grades, Andy had an example of a kid who was doing fine up until school closed and then just kind of disappears. Hey, I was at the drugstore tonight picking up some medication. A grandparent was telling me about her Cove grandchild who's working. He's busy. And now she's worried, wait a minute, we got to somehow fit school in there too. He's got other tasks to do. And by the way, nobody's at home most of the time to keep him on track. How's that going to work? So there's some very real concerns, a lot of examples. I've had the parent question started this morning at 7:30. People had heard about this already at 7:30 this morning. The word had got out. Wait a minute, we're flip-flopped. So concerns, a lot of anxiety. I've had several seniors in my office today. Mr. Miles, I'm worried. My grades, how's this going to look? How is this going to work? Am I going to graduate? So across the board, there's a lot of anxious folks, and rightfully so. So back to the grades. What's the best solution? Mr. Pettit and I talked about this off and on today. And my concern has been how, the same way Mr. Pettit has phrased this, how to hold kids harmless at the same time, reward those who are doing the work. I think giving kids that option, here's what I can tell you. There are teachers out there who are have some great ideas. Time will tell how well it works, but they've got some great ideas on how to move forward. But it's uncharted territory for the most part. We haven't done this at Cove. Our kids haven't done it. Families haven't done it. And of course, there's a question of, what's going on at home? Are parents working out of the home as well? Is everybody sharing the same computer to try to do all this work? Lots of variables. So from my perspective, offering the ABCP option with student choice is a good option. If things don't go well as planned, and you've got, one of my concerns from the get-go has been, what about those kids who are 4.0 kids and we shut down a week early and maybe they got a B+ instead of an A, and maybe they're a high school junior looking at their senior year next year. They're honor society kids. They're goal oriented, they're headed to college, and they just got screwed over by circumstances that they had no control over. And now they're sitting there with a B plus. One of my directives to teachers is provide an opportunity to correct that. Likewise, a kid who has an F at the end of third quarter, provide an opportunity to fix that, just like we would during fourth quarter. So that was the directions to teachers yesterday morning. Go forth and do good work. Here's a list of priorities after you connect with kids. Start on these priorities. I think that ABC pass fits well with that vision of how to navigate these challenges that we have.
Mr. Miles, the idea of ABC pass, do we make it the school-wide that it is, you referred to it when you're talking about third quarter, student choice.
Correct.
At the end of the grading period, a kid can choose for example, a student will say, okay, you have a B, would you like a B or a P? Is that what we're saying?
Yes. And here's the other piece of that. Again, looking at the hold them harmless. Let's say they've got an A coming out of third quarter, and this whole hokey system we're putting together, even though they put out pretty good effort, they fell short of an A for fourth quarter. How do you marry up a P with an A? I would just separate the credit on the transcript. Show a quarter credit at a A and a quarter credit as a P. That's probably the simplest way to separate grades that are dissimilar.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mr. Frisch, does that address some of your concerns? Is that
A little bit. I guess considering the fact that I think a lot of people have a lot of anxiety right now over the economy, the Z, everything. I mean, is this just adding another level of an anxiety that we don't need to add? And at the end of the day, are the kids going to learn any more if we grade them than if we just do what you guys had originally intended? Ultimately, what do you, in your opinion, both of you, Matt and Earl, I mean, what's going to get the kids the best? What's going to prepare them the best to hit next year, ground running, hopefully all this behind us, we just move on?
I'll start with those that actually jump in the system and achieve at the secondary level. That's what I'm really talking about here. This is one of those opportunities, and I hope that our teachers, I know a few of them are taking it as the opportunity, because if you think you're not going to be masters of online or distance ed in your lifetime as a high schooler, now you're wrong. I mean, my own daughter went out to college and all of her classes are online now, and they would have been occasionally anyway. And they're going to have to learn how to deal with that kind of stuff. So there's an opportunity. There are some opportunities, some good things possible out of this. I told you right from the start, as a whole, well, there may be exceptions, but as a whole, we are not providing the same standard level of education that we are familiar with in Cove. I can't expect that. I can see it. When our teachers are experts in pedagogy and in the classroom, a few of them are pretty good at running online. Most of them are rookies at running online, and they're working hard to happen, knowing what's the priority. So we want to make.
But I guess where I'm struggling a little bit is, I mean, you've multiple times you've said we're not going to be able to provide the same level of education. Yet once that letter grade is in black and white on their transcript, in a year, that won't reflect that it doesn't, no one will look at that and go, well, that wasn't that, you know, that B or that A, that's not the same as the A they got the quarter before. It will be judged with the same weight
Yes,
within 6 months or a year.
yes, but here's what we're challenged with. With a big pile of papers, in the end, we're told you're going to assign some credits. That's what we're being told. We're trying to figure out how can we do that and still hold kids harmless. We're proposing a system here where every student has a choice. And the choice would be, do I want this on my GPA or don't I? If they got credit. If they don't do anything, or they fail, it doesn't go on their transcript at all. It didn't exist. It doesn't harm them. So I hear what you're saying, but right now I can only come up with, this is going to reward. When somebody takes English online and with Dr. Farrell, for the next quarter, they end up with a quarter credit of English. Okay, so if they were normally an A student and they got a B, they choose a P. Great, they have their quarter credit, they met their requirements, and it has no impact on their grade point average. If they're an A student and they got an A, they post an A. Hey, we were able to reward them. That's with and by the way, we have students that if they get a C, they want it rather than P because they need it for their grade point average. So that's why A, B, C, and that's why D is not included, because it would never be an option. Nobody would ever choose a D over a P.
So it sounds to me, Earl, it seems like the closest to your old plan as you are allowed by the state currently. So
Yes.
You're not holding those accountable who can't be successful with the state mandate, but you're also allowing opportunity for those who want to achieve more to get credit for that as well. So that's kind of a good, I mean, that's pretty good at considering the circumstances.
Yes, and a reminder, in all of this discussion, there is a second phase to the discussion yet to come. And that is credit adjustment in our policy pathways to graduation. Because out of all of this, if you're going to hold somebody harmless for a quarter, well, a quarter of full-time enrollment at Cove High School is 1.75 credits. So if you're going to hold them harmless and yet find the medium or the middle ground or something, then I will at least be in the middle of the month, I hope, at our next meeting, be asking you for we'll be doing a change to the regulation proposal so we can change our graduation requirements for the 4 years affected by this to say 25 credits, 24.5, whatever. And remember, no matter what we do, our minimum will still be above the state's normal minimum. Did I do my math wrong? I saw you ciphering. I did that in my head. 1.75 quarter. Yeah, that's right. Seven. Okay. Yep. So what I'm requesting from the board is a motion that directs the letter grade assignment in the district, and this is district wide, so it'll go all the way down to, actually, it will impact all the way down to 4th grade, where somebody will have the same kind of thing. But remember, 4th grade through 8th grade transcripts aren't exactly something that anybody cares the next year. But it guides discussion with the teacher, and no matter what, we're going to provide feedback. But just for consistency, it would be letter grades in the district, and specifically that we only assign letter grades of A, B, or C for work during the time of the school closure. That's A, B, C, or P. And it is a student's choice to choose a pass rather than a letter grade. That protects all students, puts them in the driver's seat, so that if they are in those different situations, the high achievers that get the A, good for them. They're going to want to post that. That's a good thing. The average student that gets the B, they're probably going to want to post it because that pulls their grade point average up. And the same with a C. We have some somewhat below average performance as far as grades go. A C is actually a good thing for them. Pulls their grade point average up because a pass has no impact on grade point average. You only are rewarded the credits and not calculated in grade point average. So that's the general idea. I won't tell you that it's a perfect system. I think I've told you quite the opposite. It's the best system I can come up with, where we can try to encourage and reward kids for doing good things, and at the same time, hold the rest of the students that do not perform at the time of closure as harmless.
Well, Earl, I'll just say that I really am encouraged that there's some local input that's allowed. When you first provided your email, especially given that conversation that we had at the emergency board meeting last month, or whenever it was, a few weeks ago, of distance learning was not even on the table. Now to at least being able to try to tailor something to meet our needs, and then working collaboratively with the teachers and the administration there, I am encouraged by that. I also like your hold harmless philosophy. I think if we're going to try to find a silver lining out of any of this, or have some positive takeaway, it'll be the fact that we encourage these kids to become independent lifelong learners. And the way we're going to do that over the course of a lifetime, whether you pursue college or not, there's going to be online instruction. And so having some familiarity with this will at least be some kind of a bright spot potentially to attempting this, understanding all of the nuances of rolling something out overnight and it not being perfect and everything. So just for the record, you would have my support in helping establish a letter grade assignment of A, B, C, or P just during the school closure here.
Jamie has something.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was just getting on our website and that was a nice message that popped up, Earl, that stops you before you can even enter in saying, we're currently closed, but here are the resources available, the food program, delivering the Chromebooks or the iPads home to families if they need it, help with internet access. That's pretty incredible, really. And I would guess that a lot of districts, all districts are probably struggling with this. So for Cove to have those resources readily available and to distribute that quickly, that says a lot. We're probably farther ahead than a lot of other districts just because of that.
Well, okay, I'll toot my own horn, or the district or whatever. Yes, we are. I'm getting people calling now, other districts, saying, hey, I heard you're doing, hey, how did you set that up? And even today, and for however it all played out, we seem to be one of the first in line to get something done of the neighborhood. LeGrand is a big city. I don't really count what they're doing because they're in their own world. Mm-hmm. All the neighboring 1A high school districts, I feel privileged to be able to help to assist them, because I'm sending them documents and how we're getting things done, and I'm watching them copy, and that makes me kind of smile. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So do we need a motion? Is that what, or just our support?
I guess before you make a motion, I'm not going to be able to support this, and it's not a reflection of the work that Earl or Matt have done. You guys did an excellent job of explaining to us why we shouldn't do this. And I believe this is being forced down your throat by the state. I honestly don't think you think this is in the best interest of our kids. I think you're doing what the state is mandating, and I guess I've just had my fill, and I'm going to push back against the state a little bit. And so for that reason, mostly that reason. I'm not going to support that we go to this system. I prefer the system you had in place basically at the end of last week.
John, I don't have any qualms with your position. You and I think had a conversation, I don't know when it was, but in the last day, and I think I described this morning as, when I got up, this is a hill I'm going to die on. I just feel like we found a way that is a solution that works and works for everyone, and that we can actually have some fidelity implementing. If I had to come out of that meeting with Colt Gill today saying, thou shalt grade every class and offer every credit, then I would have been dying on the hill. And this is where I came out on this. But I do absolutely respect what you're saying, and in many ways support what you're saying, John.
Yeah, John, I'll chime in too. I mean, I agree that we should not be in the online school business. I think we heard that pretty loud and clear last meeting, and I fully support it. I do think it's in our best interest, or our students' best interest, to provide them the most educational opportunity that we can, and for those kids who do want to excel, the opportunity to do that. My fear is that if we stuck to the old system of just, hey, here's some stuff, here's some work if you want to work on it, I feel like we would get very little participation, and those kids then are getting no education. So I guess I support this, in that it puts a little bit of, we're not going to punish anyone that can't do it. But I also think we need to teach our kids that this is an adverse time. Everybody's under a lot of stress and having to do things a little bit out of their comfort zone. And I think it's important that we teach them that you can work through those. You can look at different options and work through those challenges. So I think if nothing else, I think it's our job to provide students that opportunity to learn however we can. I think if we did nothing but just provide material and say it's optional, I think we failed them at that. So I think this is about the best solution that we can come up with at this point in time.
What happens if a kid, what if someone's kid chooses not to do anything? They don't participate, they don't turn, they get the C?
No, they don't do anything. It doesn't show up on their transcript. There's nothing there. If they do absolutely nothing, it's as though the school was closed and they physically, okay, if they do nothing, it's almost like what we were going to do a week ago. Okay, meaning we do supplementary, and now we're only going to be able to make the adjustments, any possible adjustments, by adjusting the credits required to graduate and the graduation requirements, because we just punted a quarter. We just blew it. So it would be gone. So if a student either does not perform or just says, I'm working, I'm not going to do it, well, ultimately, they're not held accountable for that. That's what the whole harmless idea is all about. We know that we have that issue of providing equitable education, or that opportunity. So it isn't going to harm it. That's the promise for me. That's my whole objective, is do not harm the kids in their pathway towards graduation, no matter where they are. I don't care if they're in second grade. We're not going to interrupt it based upon this closure, because of the closure. And so if a kid just decides, or a parent says, which we're going to have, parents, we don't want to play. Well, okay, well, we're going to keep communicating, because that's what we're going to do as long as you're enrolled in our school. We're going to contact at least once a week. How you doing? Sup? Those kind of conversations. But Yeah, if they don't do anything, it doesn't show up. So on the long transcript, when a kid graduates, that fourth quarter would end up being, it doesn't exist. It's blank. So when you add up all the credits, you end up giving credit for third quarter at a quarter credit per whatever they earned, and fourth quarter never happened.
Which will end up not mattering because we're gonna
Correct.
adjust the requirements.
It won't harm them so much, say, if we reduce our graduation requirements by 1. So now we're 25 credits required to graduate for the next 4 years. Well, okay, then it didn't have that kind of harm to them, because had they passed every class and taken every class all through high school, they would have had at least, because sometimes you get more, but at least 28 credits. So now we've kept that same difference where there's 28 possible, takes 26 to graduate, keep that same level of like 2 buffer, keep that difference and adjust it down 1, because we've taken away an opportunity for those kids in that sense, that refused to or didn't want to participate, whatever, to earn 1.75 credits. I told you, we're going to do everything we can to push kids to take English. It's the only one we've really got to push kids to take, because if they don't, we're going to be dealing with it the following year, because they're going to need to recover that quarter credit, because there's 4 years of English required and we're only set up to run 4 years. That is the only class that we really want to push high school kids to just take this one. Get a P in it. It's okay. Get a grade of a P. It's all right. Get that quarter credit, because we don't want you taking a solace on or doing things in addition to your regular course load next year.
Okay, thank you for saying that again.
So these kids could technically do failing work, but we're still going to give them a P, right?
That
We're
is,
not going to let any kid fail, correct?
no, if a kid does failing, it doesn't show up on their transcript.
But as long as they take part, they'll get a P no matter what,
No,
correct?
no. Remember, what we're talking about is high school, okay? High school are clearly on standards with percentages or whatever, in each high school class. Showing up for class occasionally is not going to get them credit. Showing up for class and doing the assignments and demonstrating a 70%, for example, or a C is going to get them credit. Then they can choose to have a P, C, B, or A, depending on where they got, if they got a, but if they show up and they don't really do any work and they don't perform in this, well, hopefully they've learned a little bit, and because that's the only thing they're going to get out of it, because it's not going to go on their transcript at all. And the class didn't exist to them. It was all supplemental now.
Just for the record, I'm curious, what the plan last week was the quarter grade moved forward and that's your semester grade. Is that what the plan was?
Well, we never had a plan. We had discussion. That was an idea. Yes, that was one of the ideas. And one of the other ideas was to assign credit for proficiency after the fact. Meaning, okay, you did all this work. Now, teacher, did they demonstrate proficiency? You take a portfolio of work. You say, great, credit for proficiency, which, oh, by the way, Steve, is always a pass-fail, which would mean, okay, it would be a P. We're right back to where we were. One of the ideas was to simply extend it and award the credits. And quite frankly, in discussing with staff, and the more I've thought about it, the more I'm thinking that's not a good idea, because now we're awarding credits for doing nothing. Because if you make it a semester grade, you just double the value of that first quarter. The third quarter. Now, assigning the grade, if they do the work, that was a discussion, and it's a possibility that you want that grade first quarter to influence the semester grade, as it always does. In every system right now, the semester grade is the combination of the two. There can be different weights. And obviously in this case, the third quarter weight would be greater than the fourth quarter weight. But what I'm looking at more is making sure that whatever happens in fourth quarter is either going to be good for the kids, good for the student, the best outcome for the student, or it's not going to count at all. So they're either going to get some credit because they performed in this new challenging setting, or they're going to be right back to where we were last week, which is, oh, this was supplemental. I mean, it's the same effect. It's the same idea. They're not getting credit for it if they didn't perform. They're not getting punished, but they're also not getting credit.
Okay. Well, I know we don't need to have unity, but I like unity. And I just want to make sure that John's concern is being addressed or resolved in this. And I'm seeing the head shaking. Okay.
John's concern? I think
You're not going to change my mind at this point, guys. I mean, I said why I'm against it, and that I get they're doing the best they can, but we're placating the state, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So you can talk about this for another hour. It's not going to change my opinion.
I understand Mr. Frisch's position. I told you frankly this morning I'd have been in the same position. I was happy that I came to a resolution that I feel like the district can live with. But I think you've seen my communication. I've communicated a lot to you with a very similar message in many of them, with expressing my frustration with the state taking overall direction for every district in the state, treating us as though we are all the same. We're not anywhere near the same, and with the same guidance, instead of allowing the local districts and you, the elected officials of this district, to come up with solutions for our own problems. I wish that we could. I feel like in this case, I'm offering the best that I can to come up with a local solution, and whatever flexibility we're going to be able to get away with.
Yeah, I think all too often we always feel hamstrung because it's like we ask ourselves, what's the point of having a local board or being, elected body that's supposed to govern over a board when all of the decisions are made so far away? And this is an instance where they actually did provide guidance and let us tailor our solution to our local needs. So I'm actually, I can't believe I'm going to say this, encouraged by that kind of behavior, and frankly surprised that that's the way they're operating. But I'll take advantage of it while we can.
Steve, my impression is the flexibility came in today. If you'd asked him this morning about being flexible, it was because you had 200 superintendents in a meeting with their fangs going after him, saying you're wrong. And he caved to allow us flexibility because the superintendents from around the state were pretty united. There had to be a 90% one side on this whole discussion today. So I don't know if the flexibility was intended yesterday or if it came today, but it came. We got it. So.
Any further discussion, or are you entertaining a motion, Mr. Chairman?
If no one has any other discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Well, I make a motion to adopt the letter grade assignment of ABCP during the school closure for Cove School District.
I can second that.
I heard a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I guess that would be 4-1. So the motion would pass. Thanks for the good discussion. I think that's a really good discussion we've had, and yeah, we're not always going to agree on everything. So up next on the agenda, Ms. Pursuant with the monthly financial report.
Okay.
Can everyone hear Amy, or does she need to get a little closer?
I can hear.
I won't have much to say, I'll make it quick. I just have the normal board report. Most of the expenses look on track. I did want to point out that I know last month, I did state that I would get some of the, I would have some of the income showing a little bit more because of the grants. Well, I have to say with everything going on, that did not happen. It's been a little busy around here the last 2.5 weeks, as you can expect. So I'm hoping things will calm down a little bit. 70 emails a day, it's hard to go through and get anything else accomplished. So I will do my best to get the grants claimed this next week, so they'll show up on this board report next month. The only other thing that I have, which I just printed off for myself today, because I wanted it up to date as possible, so you guys did not get it in the email. It's the on-demand report, so Fund 180 for the cafeteria project. I just wanted to give you some numbers on that real quick. At this point in time, the year-to-date expenditures on that is $1,096,000. The range to date, which I put in, was for February and March, just because of the gap in time there. We spent $167,000 in that time period. I do have a bill from Becker that I will be paying tomorrow to add on to that expenditure amount. And that will be $463,000 worth. And in that invoice that Becker supplied, it appears they're estimating another $221,000 that we will be paying remaining on that. So that's where that stands. It looks to be pretty close to in line, and then I'm not sure what type of architectural building we will get after that, but that will finish up Becker's, it looks like, so after those two.
Amy, could you send that out to us tomorrow?
I can email that out to them.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Yep.
Superintendent report.
Okay, give me just a second here. There is the proposed calendar. It should be on everybody's screen now. Realize this is a draft. I'm not asking for approval tonight. I'm trying to guess as to where our negotiations might end up. But know that by the time negotiations are finished with the instructional staff, we will have already adopted our calendar, so you can anticipate that we'll make an adjustment based upon what happens in negotiations. I took this and I said, okay, I'm going to try to do my best to now make a calendar that makes sense. The last time we met, we said, the feedback I got said, great, first day of school, 24th. That was one of the most important aspects. 24th of August, there's your first day of school. One of the other changes I did was the student days. Well, when we were discussing before, I had 148. Let me scroll down here and show you. If you have 148 days, which is what the contract says, then the 28th is a school day, because there isn't another day to put it in. End up with a Friday school, with the teachers then returning for a day of work on the 1st. And that's the way we had it. So I said, let's just shift that over, because we're meeting the requirements at 147. If you'll remember, elementary used to be 146. This year, they're 146, and secondary are 148. Well, I can make this work with 147. I added a couple of teacher days, and this is what I've got right now. I'll be circulating this around, seeing what kind of other feedback I get, what people seem to be most interested in. And the biggest discussion is about what day does school start? The 24th. And we're putting it out now when people are asking, because there's no other calendar proposal out there. School starts on the 24th of August. And this issue over here, winter break, because of where Christmas falls on a Friday, we actually go into the 23rd. Now I have the 23rd marked as a half day. It doesn't have to be, but the half day, remember, is what it says is student early release. It's a teacher contract day. If you run it this way and you do a teacher early release, then I have enough time in the afternoon to get the grades entered with our system, because they're already up in the system, but to get our grades all posted. And you'll notice that there's not a work day that follows it for grading. It eliminates a professional development or another work day. So in order to make this calendar work and start on the 24th, it means you are going to school until the day before Christmas Eve. It means you go to school, you come back to school on the 4th of January. So after going this current year in one of the longest winter breaks we've had because of the way the calendar worked, we go back to, we're back on the short end. We have a full week, let's see, 24th, the 1st, how many total days we got? 10. So it's shorter than normal, because our normal would be 14 or something, but you're shorter. Spring break aligns with everybody else's spring break and Eastern's spring break. And graduation would end up being on the 29th, although I'm open to hearing somebody start talking about it being on the 22nd if they ever wanted to. But the 29th is what I would be proposing. So this is my best work at the calendar starting on the 24th as of now. If you see errors on the draft, please let me know. I emailed this to all the board members. I'm scrolling through this so the public out there in the world can see it, see what we're talking about. Is there any questions or comments on the calendar? It's not for approval. I anticipate bringing it for approval actually in just over 2 weeks if I can get the feedback from the staff. That's the last place to get. A few community members that have expressed an interest in our calendar, I'll be asking them what they think of it too. And the April board meeting is coming up pretty quick. So
What does our policy say about adopting a calendar by?
I don't believe that we have a date set in policy. It just
Is there
says
not? Okay.
it will be adopted. Many districts adopt 2 years at a time, or they adopt 1 year at a time, 2 years out. This district has typically, okay, when I came here, I started introducing it to you in December. It became my practice and introduced in December. I want it adopted by February. We ended up with a month of discussion. Track and delayed it this year because of negotiations. Well, negotiations have now been suspended until we get back to some kind of normalcy. So now we're back to, we need to go ahead and get this done. And this should have been done, in my opinion, in February. Should be adopted in the month of February.
Yeah, I just looked up the policy. It says the board will approve the school year calendar for the following year no later than its April meeting, following the due consideration of the recommendation of the superintendent and the input from staff, parents, and the community.
Excellent, then we're right on track.
Good job, Earl.
I never pay any attention to that, Steve. I always do it in February.
I just remembered that at some point over the years, and
Well, good, I'm glad you did.
yeah.
Any other comments or questions on the calendar? Okay. Cafeteria, I think Amy kind of gave you the summary on that. We have a punch list that's still getting worked off. We have occupied it. We're having issues right now, just trying to get our internet hooked up in there. And some other issues, just small issues, typical of any construction project. But boy, is it nice. And as soon as you can get a chance where we don't tell you can't be here, it'd be great to go in there and take a look, and we'll be making a video.
I love that idea of the video, a virtual tour and explanation of the new features and things that will be offered.
Yep, that's a great idea. And our student enrollment, I actually don't know, but it's the same as the last one. I can say that because we're frozen.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how that works.
So for the rest of the year, well, we actually can enroll students because we just did it. There was a certain second grader that needed to enroll. That would be, you know, Charlie. But we're able to enroll students, but it doesn't affect any of our actual reporting numbers. We're frozen for the third quarter reporting period from that period. So that's why also when we start talking about attendance reporting for this quarter, because we're off, all of that stuff becomes a non-issue because there is no reporting. We're going to report the same number all the way through. So if we pick up kids or lose kids in the interim, it's going to make no difference for the rest of the year. That's what I got on that. Future, I'm sorry, that's your business. Oh, that's all right. Let me get the camera
Real
off.
quick, Mr. Pettit,
Yes.
are you going to be putting out some guidelines in written form for everybody to be able to digest with all of the nuances of our discussion tonight?
The discussion over the grading.
Yeah, the ABCP.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All I can tell you, Steve, is I'll get it out this week.
I just want to make sure we're all operating from the same sheet of music.
Yep. Oh, well, the teachers and the staff, that's a non-issue. As far as communicating, that's going to be really easy and quick to communicate. Communicating it to the public because it requires a lot more explanation because they haven't been part of the discussion. We've been constantly discussing this with staff, so that's a quick. I thought you were asking about the public. I will have a public document out explaining what we're doing by the end of this week. The teachers, Matt may have already started communicating while he's sitting at home. That'll be by tomorrow morning. That'll be done.
Okay, thank you.
So this is maybe a little bit off topic, but you know, it's kind of relevant to, I guess, our students in FFA and 4-H kids, ag students. Has anyone heard any information on the status of stock show? You know, at this point, I have a hard time seeing them go forward with that, but I don't know. Just wondering if there's been any guidance, you know, from the ag community as far as, you know, what are kids going to do with all these animals that they've been raising. If you know,
it's my understanding they're working on they have some ideas they're kicking around, so they are thinking about it.
Okay.
I don't know how. They've got several different ideas.
Yeah, good.
Probably not for the show, but at least to have the sale go forward in some form.
Right.
Is what I have heard.
I have heard absolutely nothing and have not been part of any discussion having to do with the stock show. But I would also ask that if any of you do know or do get some resolution, let me know because I occasionally get asked. And I need to make sure that what we're doing in the school is going to end up aligning with the stock show. We end up with FFA participation. You know, I imagine first I'm going to hear it's going to come out of Brandon.
So last item up is future agenda. What do we have coming up next month?
Well, it's going to get, it's not going to get any easier. So we definitely have a calendar and know that the budget process is going. And remember that even though the board meeting is in the middle of April, we have a budget committee meeting the first week of May.
Yeah.
And if there's no changes to any of the restrictions, we'll be doing a budget committee meeting just like we're doing this meeting. And you saw on the calendar that I can put up the calendar. That's how we'll be displaying the budget that we're talking about in the lines. I don't know that there's a better method. I know that there was guidance put out by the state. I hope I'm not going on too much of a tangent that will allow us additional time to develop our budget. I would recommend against that. It's going to be quite challenging to adopt the budget after the fiscal year starts. I don't want to go that direction. I think we can get it done on time with what we have in the community and the process.
And it's probably too much to ask, and I know it will be you're shooting at a moving target, but it would be nice to have at least some idea, both for negotiations and the budgeting process at the next meeting, if the state's starting to clue you into what they think will happen. I know that for the most part, this biennium is going to be fixed, but I think the next biennium, we need to be thinking way down the road, like way down the road.
Yeah, I'm hoping for some of those guesses, but at this point, John, I mean, given the information we can pull in, frankly, I feel like my guess is as good as anything I'm going to get out of somebody else about what's going to happen with the budget 2 years from now. Here's what we know. We know that the revenues are going to be way down. They already are. We can project that the amount of money available for the state school fund in the next biennium is going to be significantly lower. And I'm not talking about lower as far as like, oh, we didn't get as much percentage gain, as we heard that conversation. I'm talking about lower, like less actual number of dollars than what we're currently. I'm planning that now, and in the budgeting process, planning that now, and we're making adjustments in the budget. I'm saying, okay, then now the goal isn't about building greater programs. The goal is about maintaining all the great programs we have. There's the focus. There's the first step we're going to be trying to do. It's not going to be a year to be starting a whole lot of new things unless there's some kind of grant money that says you must spend it on new things or something like that. It's operations money is going to be very protected. Measure 98 is at risk, continuation of that fund. I think you know the SIA. And PERS is just frankly scary. I was trying to do a calculation in my head. Maybe Amy, we don't know. I don't get to see what everybody has, but I had this thought today looking around the district in our staff meeting, and I'm going, in the last 3 weeks, the people sitting in this room have lost maybe $750,000 and haven't done anything. It's just gone because that is their retirement account, gone. So, yeah. But the PERS rates, yeah, we were basing on certain projections and things. That's pretty, I would project our PERS rates are going to go up, although I certainly hope that somehow the financial markets don't go any worse than they are, and who knows. But they certainly went down the last month. And I'll do the best I can to get some numbers or estimates from the financial experts around the state and from PERS as to what's going on.
And I think we all understand that those are going to be wild guesses, but it would at least be nice to have something.
Yes. I haven't even looked at the calendar.
Yeah, I don't have my calendar with me either.
If it's on there, we'll put it in.
Yeah, calendar, budget. Obviously, you give us an update on food service and learning. I don't know of anything particular. Anyone else have any specific items for the agenda next time that we're missing?
I don't have a specific agenda item, but I would like to take an opportunity to thank Earl and Matt again for what they've been doing, as well as all the staff. I'll be honest, sometimes all the communication you provide us is a bit overwhelming, but it is appreciated. And you know, we can at least glance and see some of it. I read, some of it I glance through, but I appreciate that in this really tumultuous time, you're doing everything you can to let us know what's going on. It helps.
I will, I'll do the best I can with that, John. I saw the same OSBA communication you saw a month ago that talked about, the superintendent needs to manage any kind of emergency or crisis like this. And I thought to myself, I just got to make sure I keep the board informed every step of the way. And I remember the promise that I made to you, and that was do the best I can not to, or to avoid surprises, that no surprises rule. And so I'll keep doing that, John. And if you get too many emails from me and you look at the first line and say, he's got it, just delete it. Somebody else will get it.
Oh, yeah, I echo what Tom said. You guys are doing an incredible job. And, yeah, I know everybody is stressed and has, everybody's got personal issues also dealing with this whole thing. So the hard work and extra effort is certainly appreciated and noticed. Nothing else, you'll all entertaining.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to second, all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.